All right, here we go. Welcome to BCnDC, episode 40. I don't have any intro music. I forgot to turn on my computer, the other computer. Excuse me. My first burp. All right. Anyhow, today, what is today? It's June 7th. I'm recording again, obviously. Like I said, episode 40, BCnDC, no music. Speaking of which, so at the end of this, if you guys, any listeners would look up Marvin Gaye's "What's Going On," that was what I was planning on playing. I was going to play my normal intro music, maybe Michaela or something like that, and then go into, at the end, close out with Marvin Gaye's "What's Going On," because kind of seems like that's what's a good song for the times right now. Speaking of which, address the elephant in the room, right? George Floyd. I'm not going to do take an 8-minute pause. I'm not going to kneel and do all that. Not to say that you couldn't do that or shouldn't do that. So where do you start with this, right? Where do you go with it? Obviously, when I first saw it was very, very upsetting. Anytime you see a human being treated in such a way, it bothers you as a person. And if it doesn't, you kind of have to question yourself. Beyond all the details of the case, whether the cops should have been called on him or not in the very first place, it's kind of a moot point, and then I've seen a lot, people going on far extremes from one side to the other, like we like to do here in America, and saying all cops are bad, which is ignorant as fuck. That's not true. Or whatever the case may be, this kind of all or nothing type of attitude, and that's nowhere near the case. The reality is, police are human beings, right? And human beings are flawed, and we make mistakes. And not to say this guy made a mistake, he went beyond a mistake, he actually committed murder. So there's a big difference. But to say that a rogue cop that doesn't like that represents the entire police force is pretty stupid. Because I've met plenty of police officers that are good people. And to sit there and classify any group of any people as one thing is ignorant, right? It's kind of like what you're fighting against if you're extremely liberal. You're fighting against things, but then you forget that you're imposing a lot of things that, you're doing what has been done, in a sense. Like when you sit there and say that it's a white male problem, or silence is part of the problem, or this or that, and you're always pointing a finger. It seems there's not enough of just doing rather than finger pointing and blaming. That to me isn't anywhere near a solution. It just adds more problems. From George Floyd, I mean, I can remember back and thinking this is this era's Rodney King, because I was in high school at the time of Rodney King, the riot and whatnot. I was in Louisiana at the time, finishing up the last little bit of credits I needed. I think I mentioned on an earlier podcast. I did. Anyway, and it happened while I was down there. And it was very interesting to see even the differences between blacks and whites, and even the ones that I was friends with and some that would look at me differently and whatnot. I just found it very disturbing, that someone I was cool with the day before all of a sudden now wasn't cool with me just because I was white. And I think it's funny that people always think that racism is always a white person against a black, and it's not. And I hate the new definition of people trying to define racism as that, as that it's always the one that's in power that oppresses, and therefore that's racism. And that's a stupid definition of a word that we already have defined. Racism is hating someone else simply because of the color of the skin. So whatever color your skin is, and you hate someone else because it's not like yours, that's racism. Okay? Whether this cop in New York, was it New York? No, Minnesota, excuse me, was a racist or not, well, I think it's probably obvious that he might have been, but he might have been just extremely jaded too. You know, you got to think about what it's like to be a cop. And if you were to see a lot of murders, you know, domestic violence, rapes, all the horrible shit that happens to people, you could become extremely jaded. And those are the ones that seek out therapy and get it, you know, probably do okay in their job. Some people with the mental landscape are okay with dealing with that shit. Others aren't. And that's kind of something that maybe as a police force they need to develop a little bit better. You know, that'd be my solution on that end. But, you know, something I was thinking about was why we're so divided as a country today, and where the blame lies, and what we should do about a lot of these different problems we have, whether it's this racism problem that's not going to go away anytime soon, because it's kind of been a fabric of our country since the beginning. But we can get better race relations, of course, and we can get better relations in the sense just within our own community. And I think a lot of people are already catching on. And so, you know, for a lot of the violence and everything that's going on, you know, I'm definitely not against the peaceful protesting, but I am against the looting and destroying of businesses. You're hurting your fellow citizens and yourself ultimately, and I don't understand that. I never will. You know, I said something about this. I said that when I was in Louisiana, it was also the time of JFK, the movie came out, Oliver Stone, and I really got into it, and got into the 60s and civil rights movement, and studied up, you know, enough, like usual, enough knowledge to be dangerous, and really got into it, and really was angered, would hate seeing the police with the fire hoses and the dogs, and the way these you know, men and women were being treated, and children too, of color. And then some of them were white, very rare, but plenty protested. But I remember thinking when I was watching it, how angry I was watching, you know, these people being treated not like people, and thinking like, man, if I had a chance, I would do something. I would do something about that. And when I was younger back then, I probably would have been one of these idiots out there marching. Would I have been a peaceful marcher? I don't know. You know, I'm not saying I would have looted. Well, maybe I would have, because I was kind of a loser back then. But I for sure would have been partaking in the demonstrations. So it's one of those things, like, it's easy to take a step back as, you know, 46-year-old, and looking back saying, oh, well, I wouldn't do that. Well, of course, yeah, it's different now. I have a different lifestyle than I did then. Completely different. So, anyway, where some of the blame goes, right? Beyond blaming the actual officer that obviously committed murder, and the other officers that allowed it, didn't stop him, and then the community as a whole for not getting involved, right? So, you know, where does that blame lie? Where does it start? And maybe I'm going down a really weird sidetrack here with where I think the blame goes. But let's think about this for a minute. Excuse you. How much have you heard about the COVID-19 since George Floyd and the protests and the looting and the rioting? About that much, right? So, and why would that be? Well, That would be our news media, right? Now, am I one of those people that like to say fake news? Not so much. But at the same time, I think a lot of things are kind of like that. It's easy to label something as such, but it's better to say simply the news media, especially TV, which is the majority of what people, where they get their information from, is most definitely corrupt. It's most definitely, in my opinion, which is funny to say, I call it opinion news, because that's what it is. It's rarely just the facts letting you decide for yourself how you should feel about it. There's always a pundit on there telling you what he thinks about it or what she thinks about it. And never is there really any, there's a little bit of information followed up with a whole bunch of bullshit. And so to understand where I'm placing this blame on them and why, they're a business. They may start out as a news media organization, whoever it may be, whoever you want to claim, right? But, you know, like any business, they quickly realize that the bottom line is the bottom line. And with media, with the news media, it's the same thing as like a movie. It's butts in the seat. So, or butts in the seats. Yeah. So anyhow, the more viewers, the better. The more ratings, the better. The more money, the more revenue, the better, right? And that's, you know, whether you want to blame capitalism or not, whatever it is, just what it is, right? So once you understand that model, then you can no longer trust the news sources, because they're going to say things, they're going to get the best reactions to get you the quote clickbait, to get you to watch, to get you involved, and then also to keep you there. And some of the best things to keep you in your seat watching TV is fear. You don't believe me? I think they learned this model from 9/11. Because I remember when 9/11 happened, how many people were attached to their TVs every night and every day, watching every minute, watching the towers fall, watching the cleanup, watching the smoke billowing out of New York for fucking weeks, listening to the Flight 93 and what may or may not have happened with those passengers and the whole quote, let's roll, and whether or not that plane was shot down by fighter jets or whether that plane was taken down by the men and the terrorists that just bombed the plane to the ground. Don't really know. But there was a lot of us glued to our TVs and watching. And, you know, people notice, like, especially people that count ratings, like news media and other organizations. So the model is, if we're in fear, we'll be at the TV watching it a lot. And so they're going to report things to keep you watching and keep you in fear. So they're also going to base their opinion news with a fear tactic, a fear liner. I don't know what I'm trying to say. But the point is they want you scared, so you'll keep watching TV, so they'll get ratings, so they'll make more money. And it's no longer about providing you information, giving you the best news. It's just simply that. It's, you know, media making money. So it's it's hard to find good news sources nowadays. There's ways of finding it, but you have to go look for it. You know, make sure you pay attention and listening to the journalist, and if they say I think or in my opinion, then you need to shut it off, because it's not going to be the news. It's just going to be some fucking idiot's opinion, and maybe that's the person you like to hear from because it's a confirmation bias. You know, they're telling you what you want to hear, so you're like, cool, I like this journalist, they're telling me the truth. Or is it just they're telling what you like to hear? You got to question that shit. So with that, and then the second part of where the blame goes is our politicians. Across the board, I give two fucks about what side you're on. It's all of them. And you can sit there and say, oh, well, this one's a good one, or this one's a good one, whatever. The game they play is part of the reason why we're at where we're at. And they do the same shit. They learned by saying what you want to hear, by dividing us, gets them votes. Well, not even necessarily dividing us gets them votes, but a lot of times just knowing what their base is and saying what you want to hear to get your vote, and just playing to you and never really giving you results that you should receive. As the American people, it's always a lot of empty promises, and we can write it off to, well, they tried their best and this kind of shit. But the reality is they were never going in with your interests ever, because there's lobbyism, and as soon as lobbyism has been established, corruption started. You got people that are paying for their campaigns. They're going to pay them back by their votes. They're not going to do what's best for you. They're going to do what's best for them, their pocketbooks, and the people, their donors, that actually got them into office, that's going to continue getting them into office the next time they go up for re-election. And they're going to tell you the same shit that they told you the last time. So, with all that being said, so the media and the politicians are fucking over America. They just are. And the best thing you can do is turn off a lot of those programs. Not give them the ratings. Let them disappear. That'd be my solution to that. You get rid of that bullshit. Send a message. Tell them you want real news and go seek it out. Because it's on you. It's your fault, ultimately. Yeah. That's really the third part of it, is the blame is on us. Because we pay attention to these people. We let them lead us into this fucking pit. We let them divide us. We let them form our opinions rather than us forming our own. Yeah. So my suggestion to the politicians, to what we should do about that, is our votes, right? It's a broken record, but it is a solution. Our vote does matter. At the end of the day, that's the one thing we can have power over these so-called people that work for us. Right? The first thing we need to do, if we were to start our own revolution, and I'm not talking about throwing bricks and rocks revolution, I'm talking about getting our America back revolution. The America that works for the people, not for the rich, not for the wealthy, not for the people that are already in power. Fuck all that. How about we vote every single incumbent out? Not just one or two. All of them. Yeah, I don't give a fuck who your party is. I don't give a shit. I really don't, because you need to do what's right for America now. And stop doing these party lines. Stop toting these fucking lines. Stop bending to the will of these politicians. And get them the fuck out. You get this first set out. The next set that comes in, we as a public send a petition that says we want term limits. And if they don't vote in the term limits, out. Until we get the right ones that'll vote for term limits. Then after that, we keep kicking out the ones that won't do what we want, because this is for us, not for them anymore. The next thing we do is we get lobbyism illegalized. And not just where they can't receive that kind of money, but if they do, they go to fucking jail. How about that? How about these politicians, have to pay the price like the average American would? They always get off scot-free on shit. They get pardoned, all that kind of shit. But the average person sits in jail, rots, right? It's like Elon Musk said the other day, and Joe Rogan repeated it. It's funny that years ago, the selling of marijuana would have wound you up in jail or prison. And now, a few short years later, it's an open, essential business. And yet people are still rotting in jail for selling it. How does that make any sense? Because it doesn't. Because it doesn't. And not one of our politicians are going to stand up and do what's right. Because what's in it for them? Right? There's no money in it for them. There's no guarantee of a re-election unless we voice our opinions for it. Just like why pot got illegal, why weed is illegal in a lot of states, is because we as the people said, no, we want this. And they said, all right, fuck it, fine, have it. Right? So if we throw up enough of a fit, we get what we want, because it's ours after all. That's the thing about these police officers and stuff. It's like, as much as I do have a lot of respect for them, they do work for us. You know, we do pay their wages, and it's supposed to protect and serve, not to harass, right? But I would like to say, with the officers that I met, the morning of and the day of when my son passed, there was a couple individuals that I had a problem with. One of them that came to the funeral, still, I don't like the way he looked at me. But as far as the others, and I'm saying like a good 15, 20 human beings, people that came into my home to deal with what they had to deal with, were good people. And the main detective that I talked to, and the chaplain and other people, great human beings. And they see a lot of horrible shit, and you should give them a fucking break, because you don't know what they've seen, man. And just think, if that's what they saw with me that one day, they get to go on a whole bunch of other cases all the time, right? And you're gonna sit there and expect them to be perfect in every situation? And oh yeah, right, you are, right? You're perfect in all your situations. You never fuck up at work, right? You never make a mistake. Never, right? Or do you? So maybe you are human. So maybe you should cut them some fucking slack. But at the same time, when they're putting a knee on someone's fucking head and pinning them up against a fucking car, it's a bit much, right? A tad bit excessive. Speaking of excessive, look, the looting's got to stop. It's bullshit. Hurting your fellow citizens, ruining their businesses and their way of making money and their way of life. What kind of shit is that? Just so you can steal a pair of shoes. Besides, you fucktards, if you don't think you're on camera nowadays everywhere you are, come on, dude. Think about it. Beyond all that, the idea that the way to stop the violence is with more violence, I think that's stupid. So in other words, when the idea of the National Guard coming in, and I'm a National Guard veteran, so I know what we're supposed to do, and we are part of the state military. We are. And we are here for some of those domestic problems, for sure. But never the regular army. And the idea that, you know, you're going to send in more force to deal with something that is the marching and whatnot that's going on because of something that happened because of excessive force. Think about it, man. That's just beyond moronic. But here's the thing that I will say about our president. He may be a good businessman. I don't really know, to be honest. Whether he's leading our country in a right or wrong direction with economics and other things, it's hard to really say, from my opinion. But I will say this. He's lacking leadership qualities. Extremely lacking in leadership qualities. Because, in my opinion, the moment that he found out that George Floyd was killed, because I'm sure he was let know of it right away, right? The minute he found out, what he should have done, in my opinion. Now, this may be armchair quarterback, this may be fucking, backseat driving here, but irregardless, this is what I think that I would have done in this situation if I were the guy. I would have told whoever I needed to tell, we're setting up a press conference right away in the Oval Office, ASAP. Get him in there. You sit down and you say to the American people, You say something horrible happened today. A man was murdered in our streets today by a rogue officer. Now this rogue officer will be brought to justice. This officer will be charged on murder. And the other officers that let it happen will be charged on manslaughter at the least. And we'll take care of this. And we're going to figure out a better way to police our communities. And we're going to figure out a better way for race relations, especially with black men that are arrested, I can't remember what the number is, more heavily than whites, right? So this is off the top of my head. And then just to say that we as Americans are better than this, and we're going to get through this. And as a president, I wouldn't mind people peaceful protesting. You know, that's your First Amendment right. It's constitutional. Have at it. But peaceful. And I'd end it there. I would just say, you know, I grieve for the families. I'll be there at the funeral. We're gonna just maybe we'll figure out a way to write up a new memorandum on how to police and how to basically maybe how to get police officers more therapy, and then also to have them evaluated from year to year to see where they're doing and how they're doing with themselves and how they treat the public. Right? How many cases are brought against them and stuff like that? How many people have said this guy was, you know, over the top, he was aggressive, or he was violent, or he was racist, or whatever it may be, or she, whoever. But, you know, that's the thing, is ultimately it comes down to us. Whether we can sit there and point fingers all day long, right, and say it's the media, it's the politicians, it's the cops, yada, yada, yada. Well, all those work for us, including the media. Yeah, because they make money off of you watching this shit. Okay? So if you take that away from them, it takes their power away. If you vote for someone else, it takes their power away. Okay? And then, like I said, if we can start getting them to vote the way that we need them to vote, you know, by us petitioning, by us standing up and marching for the right things, and not just, you know, chanting some stupid shit, we actually petition and get some things going. You know, I mean, I get not doing anything. It seems kind of stupid, but at the same time, okay, after you marched, you've made enough noise. Like I say always, now what? Now what? If you can organize that many people, maybe you can organize that many signatures. Right? And maybe you can organize a piece of legislation that would do something. That'd be my suggestion. All right, y'all. That's about it. Short one. Short and sweet, I guess. All right. Love you all, as always. Thanks to Brad, and I need to talk to him some point. I keep saying that. Thanks to him for setting up my podcast, as always. Hope he's doing well there in Seaside. And, you know, thanks to all my faithful listeners like Val and Andy and Chuck and people like that. I'm not sure who else is listening anymore, but thanks to everyone who's listening faithfully. And you know, as always, you can hit up the podcast. What is it? 541-241-8866, and you can give me comments, or you know, if you want to be a guest, hit me up. Let me know. We talk about anything you want. Open book here, and yeah, any subject, or yeah, if you want to promote something. Anyhow, hope you all have a good day, good evening, good night, and until next time, love you all, and take care of yourselves. You deserve it. All right, see you later.